Hey guys, Varric here. So for today's video, I wanted to concentrate mostly on survival DPS. Uh, More importantly, the opening rotation you would use uh, at the start of a fight. I'm going to preface this by saying that there are numerous variations of this. This is not the end all be all of opening rotations. A lot of hunters will argue over putting black arrow first or using explosive shot or putting serpent sting, and for the most part the difference there is pretty small. um, my preference, the one that I use personally, just feels more fluid to me. I've toyed around with different opening rotations. Some were less you know I guess preferable than others, whether it was just where the cooldowns didn't really line up right, or I didn't feel like the burst was as high as it could be. But the difference is pretty small. But there are some abilities in the rotation that you don't want to use like first, or you don't want to use dead last. There's a little bit of uh, wiggle room, so to speak. But again, I'm just going to show you the one that I use. You can kind of tweak it, maybe play around with it a little bit to see if something might be better for you. Um, like I said, I've been using this one for a while. I used a different one for about a month when I first came back to raiding, and then I played around with some different ones. This is just the one I came in to settle on. So just keep that in mind, that this isn't the only rotation in the universe that you can use. There's other rotations. This is just one that I recommend. The one that I've found it's worked for me. So with that said, we're going to start. So let's say the raid started. You're in the boss. The ready check's been done. You're buffed with your food, your pots, your flasks, all that, and you're ready to go. Tank's getting ready to start counting down. Um, since you have time, you can always go ahead and manually apply uh, Hunter's Mark. However, most of your abilities will apply it manually, but it's just good to go ahead and get it. You got time while you're standing around. You might as well just go ahead and put it up there. Um, Now, for me, my first ability that I get off before anything else is my explosive shot. The reason being, I guess, for a couple reasons. One is for a survival hunter, your explosive shot will be the bulk of your damage at the end of a fight. Unless there's multiple ads and you're spamming multi-shot, uh, even then, explosive shot will probably generally still be your number one ability. So that's why I like to get it out there first. It does your most damage. I want to go ahead and use it and get the cooldown back up, and I'll explain that in a minute. Um, the next one I like to get up is Black Arrow, just because it does do a lot of damage, and two, that the faster you apply it, the faster you'll get your lock and load procs. Um, Now, like I said earlier, you can use explosive shot first, and then use a Black Arrow first, then explosive shot if you really want to. Um, I just prefer to use explosive shot first. I just To me it feels more natural. It's like I said, it's a higher damaging ability. But the difference between having Black Arrow first or explosive shot first really doesn't make that big of a difference. It's just what I personally use. Um, with that said, the next one I use is Serpent Sting. Now, back before they nerfed the initial damage of Serpent Sting, meaning back before, I think it was 5.1, when you first applied Serpent Sting, it did more damage than it does now. They nerfed the initial application of Serpent Sting. So before I would usually go ahead and apply that first and then go through my rotation, but now I don't really use that. So, but again, if you feel like you want to use Serpent Sting first and then Black Arrow or Explode Shot, those three are kind of interchangeable. You're really just splitting hairs. Um, I just like to go ahead and use it is you want to get it up there as quickly, but I don't think it doesn't override the other two for me. I like to get explosive, get the damage going. I like to get Black Arrow so I can get my lock and load procs, and then I like to get Serpent Sting just for the added tick damage. Um, After that, I like to go ahead and pop Stampede. Now, the reason I like to pop Stampede here is because normally at this point, most of my trinkets and Even my scope has usually procced at this point. This is usually where by this time that the probably 4 seconds or so have gone off, 4 to 5 seconds gone off. Everything that's gonna proc is procced. Um, my trinkets, my even possibly my scope, and I'm still having my flask, my pot that's my pre-pot that's rolling. So there's really no reason to really hold on to it any longer, unless you think that you might have to. If you can get like an extra second or two, you might want to wait. I don't do that. I just most of the time it's up, so I'm just going to go ahead and pop my stampede, and then I pop my rapid fire. Now this is where it kind of starts to become where you really don't want to pop one before the other. The reason being, your pets do get the benefit from rapid fire. Um, they don't get a attack speed increase, but their focus region is increased. So basically, they get more focus after you apply rapid fire, so they can use their attacks more often. Um, so that's why I like popping stampede and then rapid fire. Um, that for me is that probably makes a little bit of a difference. I would recommend using rapid fire after stampede. Um, After that, I would pop glaive toss and then dire beast. Now, I've been reading lately that a lot of people are falling out of favor with dire beast and taking fervor. And again, I'm not going to argue with it. I guess I haven't really looked at it in the last probably couple weeks. Um, I've been using dire beast for a while. And I mainly use it on single target fights, but I can't say that fervor's worse or that much better than dire beast. That's kind of a personal choice. You'll have to really just play around with that to see which one you might want to use. But I think they're pretty close. Like I said, between the two, you're probably not going to notice the difference in like an overall DPS. But I think when I simmed it in female dwarf, I think it was like 500 DPS increase. But again, that's it's just a simulation. You kind of got to take that with a grain of salt. But anyway, after glaive toss, I'll pop dire beast or fervor, whichever you want to use. Now, this is why I like using explosive shot first, because after I've done my first explosive shot, black arrow, serpent sting, I pop my stampede, my rapid fire, and my glaive toss is off, and whichever one I decide to use, fervor or dire beast, my explosive shot is off cooldown. Or if I'm really lucky, lock and load is procced. So now I've gone all my abilities and I'm coming back around just when this is coming off cooldown. So it lines up almost perfectly. There's no wait. I'm not really delaying any global cooldowns. It's almost at times it's just exactly. And that's why I like that rotation. It just feels more fluid to me. Um, Now either I'm either going through my lock and load procs or I'm just going and applying my explosive shot. Now, depending on maybe if you've popped heroism, bloodlust, and you got a lot of focus going, you may not have to add a serpent sting in here. Or excuse me, a cobra shot. If your focus is building fast enough, you can immediately go right to a murder of crows. But there's a chance you may have to build a little bit of focus to get to a murder of crows because it's so much focus cost. But that, like I said, that's going to totally depend on what's going on in your particular raid. Um, the reason I like using this last is because it takes so much of focus off, and I don't feel like delaying the rest of these abilities warrants using it before that. Um, Again, it's going to come down to probably a personal preference. Some people will use it earlier. Some people will even use it first. I don't really agree with that because you're already 60 focus in the hole. Um, and then that means you're either going to have to pop rapid fire first, and then I just don't like that. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm not saying other people don't do that. I'm just saying for me, I prefer to leave it at the end. It's a 30-second dot, and it does decent damage. But compared to especially Black Arrow, Explosive Shot, and even Serpent Sting damage, it's down the list. So I like just go ahead and putting it last because of the damage is not all that great, and because I just feel like it lines up better with the way I do. But again, just play around with your rotations, get a feel for what you might like to do. Um, Now, after I pop my first murder of crows, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pop my readiness. Um, because normally by the time I've gotten there, everything else is still on cooldown, including my explosive shot. So um, you could wait a little bit and maybe go ahead and get an explosive shot off, maybe another glaive toss, depending on what the cooldown is, before you pop readiness again. Technically, you really don't need to pop it even before rapid fire comes off. Your first rapid fire comes off cooldown because your black arrow is still going to be ticking, so you're not going to be able to reapply that. Um, your other abilities on a short, at least your glaive toss and your explosive, are on a short enough cooldown that you're not going to need to really probably reapply that to get them. I generally go ahead and if it's close enough, I'll wait a few seconds to get one more explosive shot off. Maybe glaive toss if the timer's low enough, and then I'll pop readiness. By that time, rapid fire is getting close to coming off its cooldown, so I'll go ahead and reapply my rapid fire. Go ahead and pop my, since I've already used radius and whatever cooldown I had on explosives off, I use that, pop glaive toss again, and then dire beast or fervor, whichever you want. And then by this time, my first application of black arrow is coming off cooldown as well, so I reapply that. And then all I have to do is wait for the murder of crows to tick down, and then I'll reapply that my second time. Now I'm in my normal rotation until one of my next abilities will come off cooldown, which would probably be your murder of crows would be the first one to come off again. Um, that's pretty much my opening burst. That's pretty much what I do at the start of a fight. You know, Step by step, make sure my hunter's mark's applied. Usually your tanks will have some type of countdown, whether they do it by themselves or they have it in DBM or whatever. So um, normally when he's counting down to usually they'll start at 5 mostly to give you a few seconds. So 5, 4, and then usually at 3 I'll go ahead and pop my misdirection because I know by that time he's really ready to pull. Because there's a couple of times when your tank's counting down, even at that 5-4 mark, somebody's like, wait, I'm not ready, and then you just blew either your pots. I usually wait to the last second, but I like to get misdirection off at about 3 seconds. And then when he gets down to 1, depending on how fast your tank pulls, some tanks will pull exactly at 1. They'll be like 3, 2, 1, and they're already pulling. Other tanks will go 3, 2, 1, and they'll be like a couple seconds or a second or so before they pull. You just have to kind of get a feel for your tank to see kind of what his normal pull pattern is. For me, our tank counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then he'll say pot. I usually wait about a second, and then I'll use my pot because I just want to get every second I can out of it. Just make sure you do pop it before he enters combat, or you're not going to be able to use 2 pots during the fight. So anyway, tank's counting down. I got hunter's marks applied. I've cast my misdirect. He's down to 1. Boom! I pop my pre-pot. I immediately go into my rotation. Explosive shot, black arrow, serpent sting, hit my stampede, hit my rapid fire, hit my glaive toss, hit my dire beast or fervor, uh, explosive shot or lock and load procs if they've gone off. Depending on my focus situation, either hit a cobra shot, get to 60, pop my murder of crows. Depending on whether I have a 1 or maybe 2 second cooldown on my explosive shot, either use that or go ahead and pop rapid readiness again. Immediately hit explosive shot, glaive toss, reapply if I have a dire beast, or fervor if you're using that, and then you can just spam the focus off. Uh, and then wait for my first rapid fire to come off cooldown. Use the rapid fire. Use whatever ability I have off cooldown with this explosive shot or glaive toss, and then reapply my black arrow, and then wait for a murder of crows to come off cooldown, and then reapply that at last. And then I'm kind of falling into my normal rotation. Uh, Now, unlike especially back in BC and even parts of Wrath, we don't technically have what you would call a rotation. It's more of a priority. Certain shots will take priority over others. Even if something's off cooldown, if it's going to delay the higher priority ability, you want to wait. Um, so in this case, we'll start at the top. The only one that's kind of got an asterisk by it would be your kill shot, and that's because you have to wait. You can't use it until the boss is under 20%. So during 80% of the fight, your priority will always be explosive shot. Um, you never want to delay that at all. That should always take priority over anything. If it's off cooldown, you use it. If even if your black arrow is off cooldown, you have to wait an extra second to get explosive shot. Go ahead and get your explosives. You do not want to delay that. That is the bulk of your damage as a survival. Any delay over a 6, 7. Some of these fights are almost 9, 10 minutes long. That starts to add up if you start pushing that back a second, another second, a couple after an 8, 9 minute fight, you might have lost 8 or 9 seconds that you had could have applied explosive shot and got an extra maybe 2 or 3 out of that. So just keep that in mind. After that would be black arrow, because you definitely want to get that dot reapplied, and then you definitely want to get your lock and load chances rolling again. You don't want to delay that, other than behind explosive shot. That's the only time you don't want to delay. You don't want to delay black arrow only behind explosive shot. Um, After that, it kind of just becomes up what comes up. Usually glaive toss I'll use over for, say, if dire beast comes off cooldown. Um, Obviously serpent sting. If everything's going right and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, by using cobra shot, that's the only time you should ever worry about serpent sting. It should never, in a perfect world, it should never fall off. Now there are times where there's certain bosses where they have immunities, or they'll have a transition phase, or whatever. You're never some fights you're never going to have 100% uptime. It's impossible. But uh, like on a single target fight, there should never be any drops off of your serpent sting. If you need help, use some add-ons. There's a bunch of tracker add-ons out there. Um, just keep that in mind. So again, once you've applied that one time, ideally it should never fall off. Uh, and then again, like I said, whenever something else comes off cooldown, which would probably be your murder of crows after your initial burst, if you see it starting to come off cooldown, and you see a bunch of abilities like your explosive shot just came off cooldown, and you're having to use the focus for a reapplication of black arrow, just keep in mind that murder of crows is coming, but don't use a murder of crows if you're not going to have enough focus for a explosive shot. If you have to delay a murder of crows, even if it's have to delay a few extra seconds between these two, do it. Um, just just use this when you have the focus available. Like when these two are on cooldown, go ahead and spam a few cobra shots if you need to get the focus up. Use it, and then make sure you get the focus back, so you don't have to push any of these back, because that would just be, you don't want to do that. Again, glaive toss, whenever it comes off cooldown, will usually fall behind explosive shot and black arrow, and then dire beast is kind of the last of that group. Or fervor. Fervor you just kind of use whenever you're kind of delayed focus. Like if you're really down low and you just used explosive and black arrow, and maybe even if you just popped glaive toss, now you have like 10 or 12 focus or whatever, and you need to just get up real quick. Maybe murder of crows is coming off cooldown, whatever it may be. Just you have to time fervor with the way your abilities are and what your focus costs might be in the next few seconds. Now, depending on the fight length, there's probably a good chance that you're going to get to use Stampede and Rapid Fire again. Um, if that's the case, you're going to want to wait till either, if the fight's longer than 5 minutes and you've popped heroism or bloodlust or whatever it is at the beginning of the fight. If there's a section of the fight where there's increased damage, the boss is going to take extra damage at a certain part of the fight, you're going to want to hold off on that second one. That's why you're also going to want to hold off on your second pot. You basically want to do like pretty much your second opening burst. That's what you're trying to aim to do. You want to make sure all these all abilities are back on cooldown, or excuse me, back off cooldown. If you know another heroism's coming, or there's a section of the boss who's going to take a lot of damage. If not, if if the fight's not that long, but you manage to be able to get off another stampede, and your rapid fire might be off another cooldown. It still might be on cooldown, because usually on a normal fight, I might pop an extra rapid fire in before stampede comes back off cooldown, since it's a 3 minute to 5 minute cooldown. But if you know that there's extra damage coming off, you may just have to not use that that third rapid fire after your initial burst. You're just going to have to kind of get a feel for the fight decide if it's worth the hold off on it. But let's say it's fights. You're 6 minutes in the fight, and the boss has got some type of damage mitigation coming up, and he's going to take extra damage, or you need to really just burn him in the next 30 seconds or a minute, whatever. Your shaman or whoever pops heroism. That's when you pop your second pot. You go ahead and right back through. If you can time it, and explosive and black arrow and all this stuff's off cooldown, go through that same rotation. Explosive, uh, black arrow. Um, Probably shouldn't have to use. Obviously, you wouldn't have to reapply a servant's thing, so you can skip that and go straight to stampede, rapid fire, glaive toss, whatever you need to go through, and then pop your radiance again and go through that whole spiel again. That's what you would do in kind of in a perfect world. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you may just have to be on your own. You don't have a second heroism. Um, if you're just waiting to get to 20%, maybe under, that's fine. You can just save it till that kind of that crunch time, that last push, the last little bit of percentage. If your rate overall is a little less on DPS and it just needs that little extra bit, you may save it till the end, and you can line up some other abilities. That's fine. Now under 20%, things change a little bit, and it's because of kill shot. Kill shot now becomes your number one priority over even explosive shot. If this is off cooldown, even if you have a lock and load that's procced, you want to get this out as quickly as possible. This does a lot of damage, especially if it crits. It does a tremendous amount of damage. And you definitely want to squeeze as many of these in as you can when the boss is under 20%. So you do not want to delay this at all, ever. Um, so let's say the boss just hit 20%, or the boss is getting ready to hit 20%, and you see it light up, and now you have explosive and black arrow off cooldown. You immediately hit your kill shot, and then you go explosive, black arrow, and then you go through your other rotations. Never ever delay kill shot. Um, and then after that, it's pretty much back to business. You just keep using explosive, all your abilities. As soon as kill shot comes off, you immediately use those two shots, go right back into your rotation. Um, like I said, it's not like I said, it's not a rotation because you're never gonna end up having the same exact cooldowns on something. Something's gonna be off from attempt to attempt. So that's why it's called a priority, because certain shots will always take priority over others. And in this instance, under 20%, it would be kill shot. So real quick, I'm going to show you an example of what my rotation would be. Sans the pot burning and the misdirection. I'm not going to do that, obviously. So um, go ahead and mark the target. Your tank's getting ready to pull. 3, 2, 1. See my lock and load proc to get that down. Rapid fire is getting come off cooldown. I go ahead and use that. Black arrow's off cooldown. And now I'm just waiting for a murder of crows to tick off. Lock and load proc. Reapply serpent sting. Explosive shot. No, I know. Push the shots off cooldown. Murder of crows just ticked off. Reapply that. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm just falling into a normal rotation. Um, Generally speaking, you generally don't want to fall under usually 40 to 35 focus, because you just want to have enough focus to be able to use this, because um, you definitely don't want to run out of focus, especially if explosive shot or even black arrow come off cooldown. Sometimes if a lot of things are all, you just burned a bunch of focus, especially if you had things line up with explosive shot, black arrow, glaive toss, or explosive shot, black arrow, and a murder of crows come off con. You're going to be hurting for focus. So just try to quickly get it back with some cobra shots. Just kind of keep an eye on these two. Delaying black arrow maybe for a second or two, just to get enough focus to make sure you'll have enough for black arrow. For explosive shot is fine. You just do not want to delay explosive shot if you can help it. Just something to keep in mind. You don't want to focus cap though. Sometimes, especially if you happen to get rapid fire plus a bloodlust, which generally speaking you don't want to use a rapid fire during a heroism or bloodlust. It sometimes it ends up happening. I don't like not using my rapid fire at the start of a fight. Let's say 2 3 seconds in, my shaman pops heroism. Now I have the option of either not using that rapid fire and just letting it kind of go to waste, or I can just go ahead and use it. A lot of people say you don't do that. You don't ever use those two together, and ideally you wouldn't if you can help it. Um, but again, I don't like it not getting a use out of it. To me, that just seems kind of a waste. Basically, it just gives you a bunch of focus, very very quickly. You can easily focus cap if you're not careful, just because those two abilities together is a lot of haste. So just you have to just keep an eye on it. If you happen to hit 100 for a split second, especially in that situation, there's not a lot you can do as long as you're not delaying anything. Um, Again, you always have arcane shot to bleed it off, but sometimes you can't bleed it off fast enough, especially in that situation. So it's just something to keep in mind. Um, but I think that's really it for survival. Um, Again, some of the opening bursts are malleable. Uh, like I said, you might be able to switch around Black Arrow for Explosive Shot first, or if you maybe want to use your Serpent Sting first. Like I said, the order that I've given you is the order that I use, and it's the most I'm comfortable with, and it just feels fluid to me. Some things, changing some things around isn't really going to make a big difference. You will probably never notice it just due to range. Um, the RNG just between that and crits, you're never going to have the same two attempts. So trying to differentiate between using Black Arrow first or Explosive Shot first is almost null. You're not really going to notice it. But things like not using rapid fire after Stampede, or even maybe using a Murder of Crows before everything else, you might kind of notice that. Just like I said, get on a dummy and play around with some of your abilities first, which ones you might want to decide to use first, and just play around with it a little bit, experiment. But um, just be aware that there are some, quote unquote rules that you might want to follow with that. But I think that's going to do it. Probably made this a little longer than I wanted to. I wanted to keep this kind of short and sweet and to the point, but I do want to be thorough too. I don't want to leave anything out. But if you do have any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Uh, Hopefully, as time goes on, I'll get more technical. Uh, I just wanted to kind of, like I said, kind of have a stepping stone, kind of a step one, step two, step three with these videos, so you can kind of go back and watch the first one, and it leads you to the second one and third one. So I'm not trying to bounce all over the place. I want to keep some kind of continuity to these videos, at least right now. So again, hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I'd really really appreciate it. And but that's going to do it for me, guys. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you later.